Good afternoon. Hi. Hi, welcome. Thank you guys for staying and joining us this afternoon. My name is Jarvis Green. I played Sakura Kuti in today's production. And our guest speaker is Paula Newman-Skomski, who is the founder of Peoria Home and also a forensic nurse practitioner at Providence Intervention Center for Abuse and Assault. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
What a wonderful play.
Thank you. Thank you. I think obviously our play deals with some themes and issues that you deal directly with your work, sex trafficking, human trafficking, as well as abuse. So can you tell us a little bit about your role as forensic nurse practitioner and also what sort of led you to Peoria Home?
I'd be glad to. I see a lot of familiar faces out there.
Awesome.
So my work as a forensic nurse, I work at the clinic at Dawson Place Child Advocacy Center, where we see victims of child abuse and sexual assault. We also follow up with all of the sexual assault victims that are seen in the emergency rooms in the county to make sure that they get the appropriate STD testing for the year following their assaults that they need. And any injuries that they may have, I see them to make sure that they are healing up appropriately. So that's what I do in the clinic. We also have a team of forensic nurses that respond to 4 emergency rooms in the county, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for child abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, and elder abuse. So we do see a lot of violent effects here in the community. What got me into working with the trafficking issue was in 2006, Kathy Atwood, who was a detective with the Everett Police Department, approached us at the Intervention Center and said that we had a problem here in Snohomish County where they were arresting girls for prostitution who weren't legally old enough to consent to having sex. And how could we reach out to that community? How could we provide them services? And so we formed a small task force. There were about 5 of us initially. That task force grew over the years to include about 30 people from multiple different agencies in the county to try to figure out how to really make a difference. And it's very, very difficult. It's hard to identify victims. They don't come forward and say, hey, I'm a victim of sex trafficking. And so we did a lot of education. We had folks come from New York City and do education with us on things to look for when we're seeing victims in the emergency department. We talked about services, and there are services available for minors. They're not the best in the world, but they are there. We can put kids in short-term housing and connect them with drug and alcohol services and education. But the minute a girl turns 18, all of those services go away because she's now considered to be an adult. So if she was engaged in services on one day, she turns 18 and now she doesn't qualify for services. So what do we do with that group of people trying to rebuild their lives from years and years of trauma, abuse, and assault? So that's kind of what led us to the idea that we needed a program for women 18 and over who were trying to leave the sex trade. I learned about a program in Nashville, Tennessee called Magdalene House and Thistle Farms. They've been open since '97 and are very successful. It's a 2-year residential recovery program where the women stay rent-free for 2 years and go through drug and alcohol treatment, finish their education if they need to, because so many women don't have even a high school diploma. And they also learn job skills through the social enterprise of Thistle Farms. And I went back and visited them in 2008. I think I made my first trip. I've been back about 6 times to see about the program, and I came back changed. You cannot spend time with women who have survived on the streets, some of them 30 years, and see the strength and resilience of women and their ability to carry on and survive and not be moved and not be changed. So I came back and said, we have to do this here. And that started my journey to Peoria Home. And the reason that it's called Peoria is a story in itself. So when we were looking for a name for Peoria Home, all the names that kind of indicated a new beginning, a turning leaf, starting over, were pretty used up. And one of our volunteers said, why not Peoria Home? Because President Abraham Lincoln gave a speech in Peoria, Illinois on October 16, 1854, that was the turning point of his political career and the beginning of the Emancipation Proclamation to end slavery as we knew it at that time. And for us, Peoria is a symbol of a new beginning and a journey to freedom for women involved in the sex trade. So it symbolizes a new beginning for us, and it causes people to ask questions.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I know from our conversation over the phone, I think a lot of people are surprised that sex trafficking is not only a global issue, but a local issue as well. So can you talk about what sort of impact sex trafficking has had on our community here in Snohomish County?
On average, any night of the week or any day during the day, 100 to 200 women are being sold in hotels, on the street, and other places in Snohomish County. And we have a advocate that's stationed at Denny Juvenile Justice Center, and her job is to screen every kid who comes through Denny for the possibility of being sex trafficked, a history of child abuse or sexual assault, which puts them at high risk for being manipulated and trafficked. And every year for the past 4, she and one of the detectives have identified between 40 and 45 juveniles involved in sex trafficking here in Snohomish County. And these are not girls that are being brought in from other countries. These are our homegrown girls who are being manipulated and sold in hotels and other places here in the county. In my work, I've been at Providence for 12 years now. I've worked with a wide variety of trafficking victims. Mail order bride that was brought over from Russia under the guise of being married and turned into not only a slave in the home, but also a sex slave. I have worked with teenagers here in the county who've been involved. One young woman was recovered by law enforcement, and in 30 days she'd been in 15 different states working. So, and I've also worked with children, young children. The youngest, I think, was about 6, being sold out of her own home by her parents. So it's definitely here, and it looks very different depending on the age of the victim and where they're being sold and who's selling them. So that's why it's really important here in the county that we do something.
So it seems like sex trafficking gets the most attention. Are there other types of human trafficking issues that we should be aware of, that we should know about or bring attention to?
Yes. So other forms of trafficking going on in the county that do not get as much attention is labor trafficking. And that is going on in our nail salons, massage parlors, the food industry, and the hotel industry. Also in our agriculture, not only in Snohomish County, but Skagit County and other counties where there's a lot of harvesting in the summer. Folks that are brought up to do all that harvesting, a lot of them are being labor trafficked. It's harder to access those folks. They don't come in for services. Sex trafficking victims will sometimes show up in urgent care clinics and the emergency department because of injuries they receive from their customers or for testing for STDs. But the labor trafficking folks, we're just not seeing.
It sounds like you're already doing so much for the community and your work. So Snohomish County and yourself, what are you guys doing to sort of tackle these challenges, with human trafficking in the labor workforce and nail parlors and all of that? How are you guys dealing with that? And
I would like to say that we're tackling it a lot, but I honestly don't feel like we are, because the money from administrators and things are not put into place for law enforcement to really focus on this issue. We have one dedicated Snohomish County deputy who works on trafficking, and we have one Everett police officer who does that part of the time. That's not a lot for a population of 750,000 people, which we have in Snohomish County. So they really kind of are reactive. So when we identify victims and report to them, they investigate, but it's very difficult to spend a lot of time proactively moving forward. I will say that the focus is really starting to shift with law enforcement. They do stings around the county on occasion, and they're really starting to focus on the buyer more than the seller. Because the buyer is a lot easier to get than the seller, who is usually not present and doesn't show up for the stings. They send their girls, but they're off somewhere else. So it's hard to get to the seller.
Now I want to open it up to the audience if you guys have any questions. Yes.
What's the difference between the buyer and the seller? Well, the seller is what we call the trafficker or the pimp, and they may have multiple girls and boys too. This happens with young men as well, under their control. The seller is somebody, you know, who goes and buys these girls, and morally, are you asking morally ethically, what's the difference? The buyer could be anybody. Yeah. Contacts them on the street, or more often now through the internet. Most dates are arranged through the internet now. We do have some places in Everett that women are walking the streets, but most of the dates are arranged through websites like Craigslist, Backpage.com, and there are several other websites as well where dates are arranged.
Yes. In the back there, yeah. I'll get to you next.
From my experience, I think it's easier to get somebody to leave who's been doing it for a long time than for somebody who's newly engaged in the lifestyle. Because the women who have been doing it for a long time are tired and worn out and can't produce for their trafficker the way a younger woman can. And most of the younger girls who are involved in this that we've encountered have really not wanted to leave because they still believe that this guy loves them and is going to take care of them. And a lot of times what they receive from the trafficker, punishment-wise, if they don't meet their quotas, is better than what they left at home. Because over 90% of women involved in sex trade work and prostitution were sexually assaulted and abused in their own homes when they were young children, and often for many years.
Yes, right here.
Kidnapping is really rare. That's what you're going to see in the media and in the movies. A lot is kidnapping because it's sensational. Kids on the street are at extremely high risk for being manipulated because they need a place to stay. They need food, they need shelter, they need clothes. So it's easy for a sweet-talking guy to come and manipulate a young woman living on the street and promise her that he's going to provide her with nice things and shelter and food and etc. But it's not always just runaways. We have experienced girls who are attending high schools here locally. At the end of the day, they go and do tricks before they go home. Do you know any teenage girl who doesn't have a romantic fantasy? Every teenage girl wants to be in love and wants to have somebody to be in a relationship with. These guys are pros at what they do. They are skilled talkers, manipulators, and liars. And they will meet girls at the mall. They can identify a girl with a low self-esteem in less than a minute at the mall. And that's who they're going to target. They're not going to target the girls that they say something to and that girl looks them right in the eyes and tells them to fuck off or go away. They're not going to mess with that girl. They're going to target the girl who won't make eye contact or isn't walking as straight and as tall or looks like maybe she is down on her luck or her family's down on their luck. And that's who they're going to target.
So it's a socioeconomic thing. I mean, you know,
A lot
girls
of
that
times.
have families that are supportive, that, you know, would speak against this, they're not targeting those.
Not as much, but they still fall
They
prey
still-
to this too.
Wow.
And the internet, you know, is really a double-edged sword because a lot of girls are manipulated through websites like Facebook and Snapchat, and there's a whole bunch more that I'm too old to even know about that they talk to guys on the internet and they sweet talk them and manipulate them and talk them into meeting them someplace. So.
Yes.
Get behind the organizations that provide services to these folks. So for juveniles, it's Cocoon House. They provide street outreach, they provide shelter, and a safe place for kids to go on the street. Cedar House is another teen shelter. You can support those programs because they really work with the at-risk youth that are living on the streets and homeless in the county. To help adult women, get behind us at Peoria Home and help us get the home open because we're not yet. We don't have enough funding yet to open a house. So if you know somebody who has a house that's just sitting around that they don't know what to do with, we'd be happy to help them repurpose that. Recycling, you know, saving the earth. Or, you know, donate and help us get open so that we can help the women on the streets who are wanting to come off.
And continue doing theater that reflect the times that spark conversations like
Yes.
this. Yes.
From good folks like you. We have a couple of small grants, but not very much. So we have done fundraisers through the year. We have a Beacon of Hope dinner and auction. We've had 2. We'll have another one in March, either the 4th or 11th. So put that on your calendars now. Hold those dates. And we have a website where you can make direct donations.
And Village Theater recorded this talkback, so if you don't remember any of the names, just go to their website and they'll post this talkback. Yes, in the back. And I think that's our last question for the day. Thank you. Kathan, let the writers know that. Yes.
There are beginning to be some talks, but it's very difficult to get into any of the schools and talk about sex in any format. You can't even talk about good, healthy sex, so talking about dangerous sex, we don't get very far either. But they have had curriculum developed that addresses middle school where it kind of needs to start, and also high school students. And so they are starting to put that in some of the schools. Really where this needs to start is when kids are babies. Yeah. Correct. Correct.
And we have time for one more question. You have a, yeah.
I agree with that too. People are afraid to report. Because they're afraid that they're going to be wrong, that it's going to cause problems in people's lives. But the law says if you suspect that a child is being harmed, you are to report. You don't have to know, you have to suspect.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Go online and give your money to Peoria Home because they're doing amazing work. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.